Hey there, Fletch from All Things Overlanding here, and today on this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be talking a little bit about overlanding on a budget and some tips and hacks to kind of get you started and get you started going in the right direction without spending a ton of money, without having to reinvent the wheel or, go out and spend thousands of dollars. So I see this all the time in the Facebook groups and all the forums and things where people are like, I just got XYZ vehicle and now I want to go overlanding. What do I need to buy? What are the things that I need to get to start? So again, today I'm going to start you off with the bare bones basics, what you actually really need. And again, the hope is that it will save you time and it'll save you money and it'll get you out exploring so that you can enjoy it. Make sure that you enjoy it first before you spend thousands of dollars and potentially waste a lot of time and money. So let's get into overlanding on a budget, tips, hacks, and tricks.
You got it, I got it. It began in the land of the sandstorm. I fought it, though I wanted everything to do with what you give to me. Loosening my grip.
All right, guys. So as I mentioned in the intro today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about overlanding on a budget. Now, let me kind of back up a little bit and tell you a little bit about myself. If you're new to the channel or if you haven't really seen some of my stuff before, I do currently drive a pretty new truck that is a little bit on the expensive side. I did buy that to replace both an old truck that was kind of breaking down and a daily driver, so I kind of replaced two vehicles with that one truck, so you can do that. And I see people doing that all the time. People enjoy that reliability of a newer vehicle. They like having a warranty. They like the newer features, the nicer technology. All those things are benefits. So again, I'm not going to ever say, don't go out and buy a new vehicle or, only buy a beat up old beater and that's what you're going to take overlanding. You can do overlanding in whatever you've got. Typically what I would say regarding vehicle is your best way to start is to take what you've got now. If it's a little bit on the silly side, if it's a, Toyota Corolla or something like that, you absolutely can get out and explore. Now, can you go, do Black Bear Pass? No. Can you go out and hit the Wyoming BDR? Maybe, actually. I've been through it, and it's not actually all that challenging. Probably a Corolla would have some trouble, but most four-wheel drive vehicles could do it pretty easily. But again, there are tons of national forests, there's state forests, state parks, things like that around you that you can go, and they're mostly just gravel roads, right? There's not a ton of challenging off-roading that you need to do, and there's a lot of good camping. Like right now, I'm in Hoosier National Forest in Indiana, and it's beautiful here right now. The leaves are coming down, they're changing colors and stuff, so if you're listening on the podcast, sorry you can't see that. If you're watching, though, you can see these leaves behind me, right? It's just beautiful. I'm actually out here, and I'm kind of doing some work and stuff today, and then shooting some videos and podcasts for you guys. But so you could come out here. I mean, I've taken my wife's Pilot out here and camped out of it before. I used to have a lowered Lexus IS 350 that I brought out to Hoosier National Forest and camped out of probably 7, 8, 9, 10 times for the year and a half that I had that car. So, I've done it in just about everything. You can definitely do overlanding in almost anything. Now, again, you're not going to do the super extreme stuff. A lot of people may argue that it's not real overlanding, it's just camping. And in a lot of those cases, it is camping. But in my opinion, camping is preparation for overlanding. So coming out and doing a one night or a two night in your local national forest will still give you the opportunity to test out your sleep setup. It'll give you the opportunity to test out your cooking setup, your tires, your lifts, suspension, anything that you've changed on your vehicle, anything that you modify, anything that you add, any gear that you've picked up, you can still go out and go camping with it and test it out and make sure that you like it, make sure that it works well, make sure that you uncover any flaws or things that you can forget. A good example would be I had a propane fire pit that I brought one time, but I forgot the hose for it. And I got all the way out here and I was like, man, if this was a 2-week trip, I would be hurting, right? I'd have to go find a Walmart or something and buy a hose because I can't go the full trip without being able to use this propane fire pit. But on a one-night camping trip, I was like, okay, that's inconvenient, but at least I figured it out and I will make sure that I always have that in a spot where I know where it is. So again, camping, in my opinion, is just as valuable as the full-on overlanding. So that's kind of a tip number one is don't feel like you have to go out on a 2-week trip. You don't need to take time off work and stuff to get started on a budget. Go out for a night. Find a spot where you can do some dispersed camping, like a national forest, like a state forest, anything that's public land that you are able to go onto and camp is a great option. It's a great way to test out your setup, and it's a great way to get prepared for a longer overlanding trip later on once you kind of sorted out your setup and decided that you really like it and you want to do longer trips. Okay, so next tip, again, keeping budget in mind here, right? Take the car that you got, like I mentioned. That is a great first tip. Don't feel like you need to go get rid of your car immediately because you stumbled upon Overlanding online and it looks awesome and you want to just sell everything and buy a big four-wheel drive Tacoma, right? So stick with the vehicle you've got just to start, just so you can go out and learn, and that'll get you into it. Now, next, the same applies to gear, right? So as much as you're going to see all these rigs online, rigs, trucks, vehicles, whatever, SUVs, that are going to have rotopacks, fuel tanks strapped to the side, and a bed rack, and a rooftop tent, and a cab rack, and fuel cans, and water ports, and, you know, heated water systems, and just there's so much gear out there, right? Like the overlanding craze is kind of exploding, and gear making companies love that, and they're just pouring new stuff into the market. Now, a lot of it has some value, right? A lot of it's really cool. If you, again, later on decide, man, I love 2-week trips through the Wyoming BDR, but I need to be able to take a shower. Okay, then great. Get a hot water heated shower. That's fine. But don't go out your first time and be like, well, I can't go on a camping trip because I don't have a shower. I'm going to go for one night. I want to take a shower. I just can't go. Do not view it with that sort of approach. Take what you got, get out, make sure you have shelter, right? Make sure you have a tent, make sure that you're prepared for the weather, that you're dressed appropriately, make sure that you've got food and water, right? Bring some first aid stuff, bring some recovery stuff if there's any chance that you may be in a spot that's going to be a little bit tricky. If you have traction boards, if you have a winch on your vehicle, great. If you don't, though, you don't need to go out and buy a new bumper and buy a winch and spend a bunch of money. You can go out and still have a good time. Bring a strap and some D-rings, right? Like there's a million ways. Go out with a friend so that you've got someone with you for safety, right? Bring some medical supplies. But short of that stuff, all that stuff that I just mentioned, you probably have some of that laying around your house, right? You probably have Band-Aids. You probably have some like basic first aid stuff at your house. You probably have some basic water bottles. You don't have to go get a $150 aqua brick or whatever. I don't know how much they are, but you don't have to get a really expensive like water brick or Wavian water can or fuel can or anything like that. Just take what you got. Take a couple water bottles, fill them up with water so you've got some extra to drink if you get really thirsty or if you want to use some to cook. Bring that stuff with you. Bring a tent that you've got already at home. Just get out and get into nature and start to experience it, right? Now, once you've done that a few times, then you're going to really quickly start to learn what you enjoy doing. Like for me personally, I'm not a big cooking person. I don't really care about cooking that much. So I have a really basic little Jetboil Genesis stove that works really well. It does allow me to cook a lot of stuff if I want to, but it takes up very little room. It folds down into a little bag. It's got everything that I need in one bag. And I even keep my utensils in there too. So it's really nice to be able to just have this one little thing. But again, if I watched these YouTube videos and just made my decision based on what looked cool in the YouTube videos, I probably would have made some big, huge slide out drawer system with like a pop top on it that has a stove inside of there and like a fridge built in and all this stuff, right? That's just way overkill. And then, a few years later, here I am and I'm like, you know what? I don't really care about cooking. Like just give me a freeze dried meal or give me a gas station buffalo chicken sandwich or something. You know what I mean? Like, let me just put it in my fridge and run out there and I'll just go camping and I'll hang out and read a book or shoot videos or whatever, do that kind of stuff and just enjoy and relax. But you won't know that until you go. So again, if you're newer, you need to just get out and go. Do not feel like you need to spend $1 million on gear. Okay, so the third part of this episode that I want to talk about is sort of a hack for getting started in overlanding on a budget is DIY. I'm a huge proponent of DIY. I love building my own stuff. I find a lot of the times that there are not options on the market for what I want, so I have to DIY in those instances. But there's also a lot of times where there's a ton of stuff on the market. Let me give you an example. Decked drawer systems. Really nice product, right? Pretty pricey though, $1,000 to $1,500, somewhere in that ballpark, depending on what truck you have. They're kind of vehicle specific. But you could easily be like, I want a drawer system. I want a place to store my stuff, right? And then when you do that, then you are committing yourself to spending a really big chunk of money. And then maybe you get out and you start camping and you're like, you know what? I hate this. All my stuff is always jumbled up. I can't find stuff. This thing doesn't fit. That piece of gear doesn't fit. My stove doesn't fit. Once you kind of get into it, you may figure out that you spent all this money. You got to sell that drawer system at a loss just to get rid of it. And then you got to figure out another solution. In my instance, I had a decked system in my old truck. It came with the truck and I liked it and it was fine. I'm not throwing any shade at deck. There's a ton of people that run deck systems. They're really nice. They're well built. They're way better built than something that I can just build myself, if I'm being honest, from like a construction standpoint. But For the money, right, you can spend that big chunk on that drawer system, or you could spend a fraction of that, build your own drawer system, build it to your own specifications, look at your gear, lay out your gear, plan for it, and then say, hey, if I build a drawer system that are these dimensions, right, like that will give me the ability to fit all the stuff that I wanted to that maybe wouldn't have fit in the deck system just because of the way that they're mass produced, right? They're not produced for your gear. So like that is a good example. Another thing is I had a problem where my cord for my fridge was constantly getting stuck in my slider. And it was kind of cutting the cord and starting to damage the cord. And I was worried that I was going to, lose my fridge or have to buy a new cord or something, which isn't the end of the world, but it's still an added expense, right? So what I ended up doing was I took a little D-ring, like one of those with that you bolt down to like the top of your drawer system is what I did. I attached it to the top of my drawer system, and then I actually zip tied my cord to that D-ring. And so what happens is when I pull the fridge out, the D-ring, I connected it in a spot so it keeps tension on the cord for the fridge. And when you pull the fridge out, the D-ring actually goes up with the cord and allows it to move so that it gets out of the way. And then the fridge slides out. And then when I slide the fridge back, then the D-ring, again, the cord is zip tied to it. It goes back and it pulls that cord with it. And it just keeps the cord out of the way so that it doesn't get stuck or hung up in the tracks for the slide, for the fridge slide. In that same sort of vein, and I'll walk over here and I'll show you at the truck if you're watching on YouTube, and I'll describe it for you if you're on the podcast. All right, so we're over at my truck now. Just to show you guys that can see it on the YouTube channel or on Spotify, there's my little D-ring solution. So again, when I pull the fridge out, the cord starts to move with it. And then I've got to balance it a little bit here. But then as the fridge starts to tilt, that D-ring just lets that cord come. So you see how it's staying out of the tracks? And then it just moves with the D-ring. It just gives it that little bit of extra flexibility, keeps it pulled off to the side so that it doesn't get hung up in the tracks. And then the other thing that I did as a DIY that I wanted to mention was this tilting fridge slide. Now, tilting fridge slides can be hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars. I mean, most of them are like $700 to $1,500 that I've seen, and it's just wild, right? So all I literally did was took a piece of wood, strapped my fridge slide to it, put a couple of lashing straps on the back, and tensioned them down to the height that I wanted so that it would allow my fridge to tilt. And then I put a hinge on the front. So there's a hinge at the front of that piece of wood that lets it hinge up or fold up. And then there's some straps on the back that hold it. But then what that does is it just, instead of the fridge being up, at my eyeballs, too high for me to even reach, now I can easily reach into the top of the fridge, get to everything that I need, and it's a piece of cake. And again, this cost me $20 in materials probably, and I did it myself. So it solved a problem for me that saved me a ton of money, and it also solved a problem that another fridge slide may not have solved because of the makeup of my setup here, right? Because of how tall my drawers are, maybe the drop down types won't work, or there's various different kinds, and there are always some sort of limitation to those. Versus with this, I was able to just say, hey, here's my problem. Here's the solution I want. It was kind of fun to draw it out, figure out the answer to the problem, and then create this. And again, it saved me a ton of money. Between my drawer system and this DIY fridge slide, I probably saved $1,500 to $2,500 easy, again, depending on what option you went with. And I've got something that's just as usable and just as nice as anybody else's stuff. Now, is it as fancy? No. But do I care about that? No. I just want to be able to go out and go camping, right? And that's what I want you guys to be able to do too. All right, guys. So as we've talked about in this episode, again, overlanding on a budget is not as hard as you may feel like it is. It's not as hard as people make it seem online. Everybody goes, we've got a bunch of different Facebook groups, overlanding for the poors, overlanding for the kind of poor, overlanding for the rich, right? Like we've got all these things that talk about, and they all talk about money so much. Like all these different boards talk about money. If someone posts a picture of a really expensive, really nice new rig, they just immediately get bashed and demolished because they spent all this money on a rig and you could have bought a 99 Ford Ranger and done the same thing, kind of a deal. And then the same is true the other way, right? Like there are people that, go, oh, you shouldn't have bought that crappy old beat up Tacoma. Like you should have just saved a little bit more money and bought a, 2015 or something and had more reliability and lower miles and blah, blah, blah. None of that matters, okay? That's what I'm trying to convey in this episode is you can overland on whatever budget you want. Big budget, small budget, does not matter. But you can also be smart about the ways that you spend money that will allow you to buy more gear or be able to go on more trips or do whatever, right? Gas costs money. Everything costs money. So to just be smart with your expenditures, right? To be smart with what you buy versus what you build, all that stuff makes a difference. All right, so hopefully that was helpful to kind of talk through that stuff with you. Again, if you're newer to overlanding or just getting into it, I feel like I just see this nonstop on all the boards and stuff. So I just wanted to kind of put this episode together to give you some tips, give you some pointers, get out with what you got. You don't have to go spend $1 million. You don't have to have all the fancy gear to get started. Figure out what you love, and then you can put money into those places appropriately. When you can do it yourself, right? So again, hopefully that was helpful. If it was, click that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, make sure to click that subscribe button, click the bell to be notified when new videos drop, because I do a podcast every week, and then I do a couple other videos usually every week, something like a gear video, to show you some sort of gear that I've got or like, or some sort of like a DIY mod or a vehicle mod or something like that. If you're on the podcast, add it to your favorites, leave a 5-star review. That helps a ton, and it means a lot to me. In the description down below will be links to all my other social channels, so wherever you want to come hang out with all things overlanding, I am everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Come and hang out wherever you want. Also in the description below is a link to my website where I've got funny overlanding camping-themed patches and stickers. So, if you're into funny patches for your headliner, if you want stickers for your windows or stickers for your fridge or whatever, there's a ton of different options there. I've got some funny ones like Don't Burn Your Wiener and It's a Hot Dog, or I Hate People So I Camp, and then all things overlanding merch too. If you're watching on YouTube, down below this video is a join button. That's just a nice passive way to support the channel. It costs a couple bucks a month, but you get early access to all the podcast episodes, all the videos that I do, and some other perks. If you want a more active way to be involved with all things overlanding, there is a Patreon page link down below as well. And in that, we have a 24/7 Discord where we all kind of hang out and chat about our rigs and our gear and that sort of thing. We take 1 or 2 trips a year, and we have a Zoom call once a month too, just to chat and hang out and drink a beer. And then, of course, there's the Newbie Overlander Facebook group. This is a group that I run that I'm very fond of. I've been in all the different groups on Facebook, and most of them are hot garbage. But, there's a lot of bullying and things like that. Especially if you're newer, you're not going to get answers. You're just going to get beat up if you ask any questions. So in the Newbie Overlanders group, we don't allow that. So if you're going to be a bully, don't come in. If you're looking for a place to ask questions and learn, or just a place that doesn't have all that bullying and negativity, maybe a good place for you. So that'll do it for this episode. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.